Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Spiel Sports Talk Show, the hottest sports talk show on Twitch. It's your boy Sal. It's a Muslim. I'm back in the 412. It is freezing out here. What happened to fall? It snowed this week. Um, that we're out here freezing our asses off out in the 412. But my heart goes out to all those in the Midwest. I heard there was a lot of snow out there too, so I shouldn't really be complaining. But I'm just glad to be here with my crew tonight. We got Randy finally back after absence last week. How you doing, bro?
Fall sports are in full swing as we head into late November and December. And for me, it's some of the best times of the year, just to be able to jump between sports. And I like how we get to, jump around and cover all the different topics. So good to
Yeah.
be back.
Yeah, I mean that's the best part, right? We get to talk about whatever we want to talk about, and that's the sports that we love. Quay, how you doing over there in Arizona?
And desert's the desert. Been quite beautiful in the 80s, like low to mid 80s. So it's been perfect weather. It's gonna start to get colder here as the year starts to end. But right now, enjoying a bit of this. And as always nice to be with the crew, be with the guys, and talk sports. And bring you guys a great show. As Sal said, this is the greatest talk show, on Twitch, on the airways, social media, YouTube, all the places. So it's always nice when we can get together and give the people what they want.
Yeah, I agree. So let's get started. Let's talk a bit about the NFL, or talk a lot about the NFL. We'll definitely have an NFL heavy episode since we are uh, basically in the thick of things midway through the season. And the latest news out of New York, former coach of the year, head coach Brian Daboll was fired by the New York Giants, fired mid-season, a season that left much to be desired. They were 2-8 at the point of firing, and it looks like they are going to go through a whole overhaul over there in New York. There's a lot of factors that contributed to the lack of success this season: injuries, everyone from neighbors to Scatterbo uh, to Dart. Lots of injuries that I would think that most head coaches put in that situation will probably run into. Uh, but how does someone go from coach of the year not that long ago and now it's completely spiraled out? Uh, some of the quarterbacks that came through there, like Daniel Jones, we see them doing better somewhere else. Um, they went and got Russell Wilson over the offseason, and it looks like Jameis Winston is going to play instead. So it looks like everything is in disarray over there. At the end of the day, his overall record there was 20, 40, and 1. And whenever you have a losing record, one that's as bad as that one, I think you're bound to get fired there. So, any thoughts about the Giants and why they went ahead and got rid of their head coach?
I think, of course, prayers go to Cam Scatterbo for recovery to be able to get back to his former self. It's a shame, when you see young talent getting cut down like that. Um, and it can feel like sometimes, certain teams have certain curses. You see, like Saquon had a rough time. He showed flashes while at the Giants, so it kind of, I'm sure for Giants fans, feels like deja vu in that sense of here we go. We had young, promising talent, and injuries just get us. Jackson Dart still looks good, but obviously more human with a less strong running game to open things up for him. Um, and I think they have a solid young core of players as always, but the Giants can't seem to stabilize when it comes to their management, their front office. And I think that's where they're really gonna have to figure things out if they want to compete in the NFC East, despite a lot of the teams kind of falling short this year. It's really, especially for the Cowboys and Commanders, dumb mistakes in close games that have brought them down. Whereas the Giants, I think, got off to such a bad start that it just was something that they couldn't dig themselves out of. Then they showed flashes, and then when you have an injury like that, that can really deflate a locker room. Um, we we talk about Russell Wilson, that whole turmoil, and that being a news line that can kind of just put a damper on things. But I look for the Giants to also now just play spoiler. They're going to be guys who are playing for contracts in the NFL. I think a lot of times we discount those mid to end season games, how kind of wonky they can be. I know we talk about trap games all the time, but I think really as teams are securing playoff spots and looking to rest and manage the load of the season, going into the playoffs, I think that's where a lot of teams like the Giants will sneak in some random or surprise wins, especially in the NFC East division. And I could see them just playing spoiler, and you get Jameis Winston and good vibes, and you might have a good night. And with the New York fan base, you never know what you're gonna get, whether it's an Eli miracle or performances like we've seen from their team this year. But I think the Giants will be back eventually. They've got some young direction, but they need to add a lot more pieces for this rebuild to compete with their just at least their immediate division.
Yeah, I think with the Giants, I kind of questioned the firing a little bit. Um, the team has been playing hard all year um, for Daboll. You saw the moment that um, Jackson Dart came in. There was a spark. I mean, there's a game they should have won, against the Cowboys if Russell Wilson doesn't make a silly mistake and throw an interception. But this team also had 10-point leads, with that Cowboys game being one of them. They've had four different 10-point leads on teams that end up losing the game. So he's definitely had this team playing much, much harder. The team is definitely better than where it was last year, even though the record doesn't necessarily show that. Um, it's funny because they're actually 2-8 at the exact same point as they were last year. So it's two consecutive seasons being 2-8. Um, but it's one of those things where you lost your best weapon at receiver. Your quarterback during the game against the Bears here, they they get knocked out of the game with a concussion. It's not his only injury here, but no concussion this season, should I say? But it's still one of those things where it's like if you don't lose him during this game specifically, you probably win, being up 2010 at that point. But you don't have neighbors. You lost them early on the season, and you lose Cam Scatterbo just 2 weeks ago. So your offense isn't even functioning at full power. The team still needs certain pieces built around them. I feel like if the organization wanted to fire Daboll, they should have just done it before the season started. Just because I feel like you should interpret the season based off of what has been happening versus the what he previously has done for the franchise. And you did mention the 2022 season where he was coach of the year. Maybe that should have held a little bit more merit especially with this being more of a rebuild phase. So again, if this is what you were doing as a rebuild phase, I feel like you let go of Dayball before the season even starts. And that way, you can, the new regime has the full grace of saying, being allowed to say, hey, yeah, we're a new regime, we're fixing things up. Whereas Dayball, his time has pretty much ran its course there. Um, but I don't think it'll be the end for him as a coach, whether that's college, whether that's an offensive coordinator somewhere. But as far as the Giants, as I mentioned, those offensive talents, Dart, Neighbors, Scatterbo, they have some great talent. Wandale Robinson is showing like why he's a good slot receiver. And honestly, because of how they utilize him, he's elevating like his ability at receiver. He can play more outside at number two, but um, this is going to be a good offense here. They got two good tight ends as well. They'll probably build the offensive line during the offseason. So this team is going to look good. And on defense, they just really need to add maybe a little bit of beef and some weight towards their front seven. I mean, their defensive line, great pass rushers, can really disrupt the pass and kind of blow up running lanes if they, get off the ball and just kind of blow up the run before it even gets going. But I think they need a little bit more up front just to contain the run, stop the run, and then their secondary needs to be built up. So there's things that this team can do to improve, but I think the future is bright for the Giants. As we see with this NFC East division, it is always changing. This we thought this year was going to be a complete battle between the Eagles and the Commanders. Commanders have had their injuries. Cowboys look like they could push for something, but then they lose games they probably shouldn't lose. So the NFC East is always in flux. It seems like the Eagles will be the ones on top for a while, but at some point, you just never know because, like I said, injuries can always take over. But Giants will be fine for their future. And, just shout out to the Bears with their comeback victory. It's their fourth comeback victory this year. It seems like if you just give them a chance, they're able to come back and win a game. I don't know how sustainable that is long term for the season, especially in that division where you do have to play the Lions, where you do have to play the Vikings and the Packers, and I know those two teams are struggling, but they're still good teams in a divisional, in a tough divisional sector. So it's just kind of those things where anything can happen, but I don't know if it's sustainable for the Bears to keep winning games by being behind early on and making those fourth quarter comebacks, but. Again, shout out to them. Shout out to Caleb's growth. Shout out to Ben Johnson going from OC to head coach because you don't always see a good transition there. Seems like he's a good leader of men and a good schematic caller. So, but yeah, very, very exciting game in the snow. Went, being Giants win to fun Bears comeback. So, but again, my biggest thing with the Daboll firing, think if it was going to happen, should have happened before the season started, and at the very least, see how the season ends with him as your head coach before also making that decision.
Yeah, it's crazy how quickly things can change. 22, he was coach of the year, 9-7-1. They won a wild card game, 11-33 across the final 3 seasons there for Brian Daboll. And then you see, like I said earlier, the Daniel Joneses of the world doing well with the Colts. And you wonder why they couldn't get it going with them in New York. And we saw, I think it was like 2 seasons ago, the Hard Knocks, where he's like grilling people on their QB knowledge, and you could tell that he has a high level of understanding for the game, but that doesn't always translate to a good head coach. Let's move on to our next topic here, which is Jonathan Taylor. And before we go to Jonathan Taylor, I wanted to show this clip of Scatterbo just to kind of lighten the mood after talking about when a head coach is getting fired in the league.
Do you like turn your head to eat a taco, or do you turn the taco for you? Like, are you dominant to the taco, or does the taco like? Do you turn your head for the taco? It's about the dominance of the taco though. Like, if you're turning the taco, you're dominating the taco. Do you like?
So I need to know. Do you guys get dominated by a taco or do you dominate the taco?
I think you got to keep the taco upright. You got to protect the integrity of the taco while you're eating it. So I turn to eat my taco, especially if it can get messy. But
Sounds
if
very
if you
innuendo-y.
if you're turning that taco sideways, guarantee, yeah, you're dominating it. But Scatabo is definitely eating half of the taco off of the wrapper by the time you get to that because it's gonna fall out. It's just gravity. Like tacos are not it's not a burrito. It's not a closed food item. So sorry, Scat, heal up, but get you a burrito if you want to dominate.
Yeah, I turned the taco.
Yeah, Tanya Taco too. I was talking to Kelly about this. She was saying that she lets the taco dominate. So it all depends, I think, on, how much sauce or condiments or anything that you have on there. Is it like oozing off the taco? Then, maybe you got to make the move to get
Now,
that clean bite.
if it's a birria taco, which is like a
I
flat
love birria.
meat, that yeah, I'm dipping it in the consomme and I'm dominating. But a taco that has like shredded cheese and like a bunch of
Yeah, like a
loose
hard shell one.
Hmm
salsa, especially I like hot sauce all over my taco. I'm not trying to have that spillage that comes with turning it sideways. So um I'll dominate it, but from the side.
Well, let's move on to Jonathan Taylor, who is just stating the case for MVP this season after a game against the Steelers where he was basically non-existent. He puts up an historic game for those fans over there in Germany with 244 yards on the ground. And this game, he also had 3 touchdowns. I believe he's tied with Jim Brown, Adrian Peterson, Derrick Henry for these type of stats. And he's had a crazy season so far. Over 1,000 yards already, 15 rushing touchdowns already, 17 total, almost 1,400 yards from scrimmage. He'd be the sixth player in NFL history with 1,100 rushing yards, 15 plus rushing TDs over the first 10 games of the season. Some notable names in that list: Terrell Davis and Sean Alexander here. So is JT a legitimate MVP candidate in today's NFL? An NFL where running backs haven't won MVP in a very, very long time, or is his 2025 season that special? And he kind of has the lead with this, or is there someone else that we should be watching out here? Over we talk about Jonathan Taylor every week. Maybe someone else deserves to be MVP, but to me, uh, 244 yards for those international fans. I mean, that's a big W for the league on an international level. But yeah, thoughts on JT's MVP case?
Yeah, I
I
think
mean,
he's putting running backs on his back in terms of like a vintage like MVP year type of performance. Um and I think we see it in the Colts performance and also seeing Daniel Jones elevation this year is largely due to having that running game. So I think worthy of MVP, and certainly top three candidates this year.
yeah, I think with JT. I don't see how he can't be. Um, I know we could say it's a quarterback driven league, and a quarterback is always typically the MVP of the year. We haven't really seen a receiver in a long time. Um, win that either. There's always one that will be in contention. It seems like this year, that's Jackson Smith and Jigba. Um, but yeah, I personally don't see how it's not Jonathan Taylor. Even if you want to say, well, the quarterback, there's a certain quarterback. Which one? I don't think there's any quarterback that truly has super gaudy numbers. Um, I guess you could argue, depending on, by the way, how this season ends up ending, maybe
Yep.
Lamar's stats end up going crazy. Um, right now, Matthew Stafford looks like he can be the quarterback to win the MVP, 4 touchdowns, no interceptions in the past 3 games, which has never been done in NFL history, which I thought was very shocking. Um, but yeah, we haven't seen this dominance in a while, and you can make the argument that if he's not the engine running that Colts offense, no disrespect to Daniel Jones, would they have the record that they do? And I think when you think about MVPs, that's the question that you need to ask, and that's the thing you need to look at when it comes to saying, like, okay, who do I want to be my MVP? Um, and I don't think there's been a more important player and valuable player on a team than JT this season. Maybe if we were to say someone, if I were to say anyone as more valuable,
I think Josh Allen
mm,
is in the combo, but after this past week, I think that definitely hurt his resume, and by contrast, Jonathan Taylor's performance just cemented.
exactly.
Yeah, I
As I
mean,
said, the only other team I would give it, the only other person right now that I would even think about giving it to is Matthew Stafford.
yeah, I mean, I think Josh Allen had a good case until the recent loss against their division rival, and I think maybe that's a good transition over to that topic there. And they had probably the biggest upset of the week, getting hit with a 30 bomb by the Dolphins. And Achan went crazy. 225 total yards from scrimmage, 174 rushing yards on 22 carries. Buffalo scoreless in the first half, end up dropping to 6-3. Uh, we all thought this was going to be the year the Bills would elevate and take it to the next level. The Chiefs were kind of slumping. It didn't look like there was any true AFC champ here. Now we got the Broncos and the Patriots with those 2 lost teams. Although I still trust this Bills team more, I think. And I think I also trust the Chiefs as well when it comes to football in January. But as of right now, what does it look like for the Bills moving forward, or is this just your typical, Miami upsetting the top dog, as they did during Tom Brady's tenure? Patriots would go down there to South Florida and lose, and maybe this is just that rendition, just a different rendition of that same song and dance here. And the Dolphins have some players. I mean, Achan's been balling all season, and that defense forced 3 turnovers this weekend. So, what do we think here about the Bills and their Super Bowl hopes, losing a game here to the Dolphins?
For me, they're
Very,
definitely
very shocking.
they're on fraud watch just a little bit. Looking at their division as well, with the Patriots starting to pull away with a 7-game win streak, and If they don't solidify it and get in a groove, then there's as can see, if even the Dolphins can catch them slipping. Um, one of I think the teams that are in much better form and have had less injuries will definitely be able to best them if they don't get it together. But I also don't think it's that big of a deal in terms of um, where they're positioned for the rest of the season, as long as they don't have another game like that. If anything, it's more of like, okay, you got that out of the way. Time to focus for the latter half of the season.
The AFC is a really tough conference this year. I mean, almost every team or every division in the AFC has two teams, arguably three teams that can get into the playoffs, whether it's a wild card, whether it's winning the division. Um, right now it seems clear like the Colts are going to wrap up their division, short of them having like a meltdown. But um, the Texans are only 3 games behind them. If somehow the Texans go on a streak, Colts somehow lose two more, Texans are back in the fold of winning that division. Um, the Jaguars are only 2 games behind with a 5-4 record. Um, so they can easily somehow string, if they somehow string wins along and the Colts take a couple losses, things can switch up. I say all of that to say is that the Bills don't have that much room to slip up. Um, the Ravens are getting healthier and seemingly getting better. The AFC West has 3 teams right now that have spots. I mean, the Chiefs are in the hunt, but the Chiefs easily can take a spot that's a wild card spot. So it's just one of those things where there's no room to falter, and the Bills need to make sure that they win the games that they should win. Um, the Dolphins aren't playing for anything. The Dolphins aren't a good team right now. But HN is a really good running back, really good player in this league. I have him on fantasy. I sadly still lost because I didn't start a certain someone, but that's okay. But yeah, HN had a good job, did a really good job. One of the best running backs in the league, one of the best players in the league. So um, he's going to have that Dolphins offense exciting to watch, regardless if they win or lose games. Um, so we'll give them credit where credit's due. I mean, what really deserves the credit is their defense, because their defense has been Swiss cheese, and their defense caused turnovers, got sacks. It's a thing that's been struggling all year, and they played very well. I mean, to be honest, we shouldn't think of this as too much of a surprise, seeing that in their very first matchup this year, if it wasn't for certain Tua mistakes, you can make an argument the Dolphins could have won round one against them early on in the season. So um, maybe the Dolphins are better than what their record shows. Maybe they just had some internal stuff and they're cleaning up things. Maybe the player meetings have worked out. Tua not talking as much. Who knows? I don't know what's going on, but they got him a win against the Bills. So, but again, I just think they don't have any room to falter much. So if the Bills want to make sure they stay on course, they're going to have to win the games that they should and know they can win.
Yeah, I think this is just a team that has also gone through a lot of attrition, a word that Coach T uses quite frequently, and it takes some time to get used to how the roster looks, especially when you come into a season expecting certain players to be there and now they're not there anymore. And it's very similar to the Giants situation where is it these head coaches' faults? Is it McDaniels or any of these coaches who they can't control things like injuries, and sometimes things go the wrong way, and that's how it's been this season. But it looks like they have had games where they can score points, even without Tyreek. I think the high scoring games that they've had this season have all been after he left on IR. So uh, I'm not surprised. I think I actually said it on the show last week that I thought that the Bills were on upset alert just because it was a divisional game and they had to go all the way down there to
Mhm.
South Florida. So um, anyone who's watched this league long enough knows those trap games, and then it happens to our favorite teams too, like the Pittsburgh Steelers. You know, losing to the Bengals there on Thursday Night Football, and maybe that's a good transition into some Steeler talk. Who this week uh, probably had, maybe this is overreaction, but maybe the worst game I've seen in my lifetime. And not from just purely like the result of the score or the stats, but just the amount of, I think, build up that happened going into this game against the Chargers. You just beat the team that everyone thinks is the best team in the league, and it looks like this week in Germany they proved that they're still up there. And for them to go all the way out to LA, and in LA, there were a lot of Steelers fans out there, and we saw this I think a couple years ago where we went to LA and they were very successful. This same Chargers team came to Pittsburgh last year, and the defense was able to dominate, and the defense did dominate very early on. I think Herbert and company, their third down conversion rate wasn't that much better than the Steelers. But the difference was, I think, the turnovers by Aaron Rodgers, the safety that Aaron Rodgers also took, where he, the play was probably done. They probably weren't going to get much out of it. You just got to take the sack or try to fall forward. But he steps back like he's like prime Lamar Jackson, thinking he's going to somehow juke his way, and or prime Aaron Rodgers, find that open receiver. But instead, they take the sack. At one point, I think the game was 5-3, and it was like a baseball game score. Uh, and then
Three
from
two
there,
five three.
it was bad. And then the overthrow to DK Metcalf, who Metcalf today came out and said it was his fault. He flattened out the route when he should have went deeper. I don't know if that's true or not, or if he's just protecting his quarterback and saying what's politically correct there. But either way, missed opportunity there, the missed opportunity with Johnu, and all of these things start to add up. Then you get the pick, and then when they actually have a chance to maybe come back, uh, this perfect ball gets thrown to Calvin Austin. It bounces off his hands and lands in the hands of the defensive back, which is very similar to some of the stuff that we saw in Underdog. I remember one that Quay threw right to me and it bounced off my hands and went to the DB. So sometimes it's just not your day. And for Aaron Rodgers, I mean, that might be his worst game of his career. Like I said, that to me felt like the worst Steeler game I've ever seen just because of how, like I said, the narratives going into this game, and for the team to fall flat all year. The narrative has always been, oh, the offense isn't bad this year. The offense is good. The offense is what's carrying us. The defense sucks. And then on a night where the defense, sure, they could have been better, but I think they did their job. The offense doesn't show up at all. And I know a lot of Steeler fans out there, the fire Mike Tomlin chants are getting stronger and stronger. You know, or do something. Terrell Austin, Arthur Smith, all these coordinators, they got to do something differently. What Mike Tomlin has to call the plays, who knows? But all I know is that game was probably a low point as a Steelers fan, and hopefully this week they correct ship and drop 40 on the Cincinnati Bengals, and then everyone's going to be high on them again. But right now it feels like the high is coming down. What do you think, Quay?
Man, I have a lot to say, but I'm going to condense this as much as possible. But essentially, um, I've kind of been one of those people that have said, things about Tomlin maybe needing to go, and not even, saying because he's like a horrible coach. I think there is something to be said about being a leader of men, like you, especially in the NFL. You have to have that, and I don't think there's really anyone else in the league. Maybe two other coaches you could say like really compare when it comes to Tomlin being like a leader of men. Um, but where he really lacked is where we are also having our struggles on the team as well, which is coordinators. He's not an X and O schematics guy. Um, he's not calling plays. He's not designing plays. Um, so he lets these coordinators, call the game how they see fit and what they're seeing. They'll relay things, and it's like, okay, I trust you to make the play. Where I think sometimes Tomlin, especially being a defensive minded coach, defensive coordinator at one point, um, you should maybe take over sometimes. Not necessarily saying the past few weeks. I think the defense has definitely played much better. It got a little tired against the Chargers just because, it's hard when your offense can't sustain drives. Defense has to come out for more plays. But they did a good job for a long time to really, one, bend and not break. And sure, they gave up 2 touchdowns, but those 2 touchdowns were kind of set up due to splash plays and then a missed field goal, one from a splash play and one from a missed field goal from Boswell giving them better field position. So it's one of those things where, if the offense was just 30% better, it could have, been more of a game for the Steelers there. But I think it was just an off game. I've said it all year that the Steelers will be as good as Aaron Rodgers is. And, he stunk up the joint, and that's why we lost the game. As I said, it hasn't been sexy, but that's also something I think has been somewhat of an issue too. Nothing against Aaron Rodgers, but we don't have this receiver too. I think we talked about it before a bit of the show. If the whole thing for the season, if the whole motto and whole expectation was Super Bowl or bust, it doesn't necessarily make sense to get rid of George Pickens. I get the antics that were, there week in and week out at times. But it doesn't make sense when you say like, we're here to win a Super Bowl. You make sure that you take every like ounce of support and ability so that you can get to the big dance. And I think George Pickens along with DK would have been a really great match, to have with Aaron Rodgers throwing those guys the ball. And I think it would open up the offense a lot. But even if that's not the decision that we wanted to do, even getting a receiver too that can make things a little more dynamic on offense. It's nice having these 3 tight ends, and I especially like Darnell, aka Mount Washington. But we don't. It seems like Arthur Smith isn't doing anything creative with lining these guys up. I don't know if it's because Aaron Rodgers has kind of changed the offense a little bit to certain things that he likes, but it's weird that we don't line up like a Jonnu or a Fryermuth on the outside and have them work outside. And maybe Jonnu's a little more shifty, so you prefer him over Fryermuth, but I don't understand why we don't do that. it seems like we play this, or we'll line up five wide, and we'll have, our three tight ends and Roman Wilson and DK Metcalf, and that's just it sucks when you have these other receivers, like a Roman Wilson. Yeah, he's scored a few times in the past couple weeks. Um, but if that's what you're relying on to really step up as your next receiver to make a play, I don't know how sustainable that is. And then we have someone like a Jalen Warren who can make plays every time he touches the ball, but then we're not, you know, giving him the ball, to really help us out as games go on. So I don't know where this all starts, but Tomlin always needs decent coordinators, and I don't know if we have that. And I think if he's not going to get that, then I do think you have to look at what's been going on the past 10 years. He hasn't won a playoff game, and it's been mediocrity after mediocrity. So it's just one of those things where you have to look at it as a whole, especially as I said about the Bills, they have no leeway to give. Steelers are the same way. If they do not make it, I don't think it's far fetched to ask that question. If Tomlin, if his time has run up and if it's time for him to go, and maybe the team that he does go to is the Giants. Who knows?
Yeah, I mean, we could see Tomlin do something like Andy Reid leaving the Eagles, going to the Chiefs, winning some Super Bowls there, and for Andy Reid really changing just the trajectory of his Hall of Fame career and just the narrative around it. Whereas Tomlin's already won one, he's been to two, and I think a lot of folks admire him as a coach and as an individual, but maybe the culture is no longer there, or maybe the message just ran out, or maybe they just don't have the talent. Then maybe there's just the talent that they need isn't there. I choose to believe that. I think, like you said, I think it's a coaching issue, it's a scheme issue. Um, yeah, every time they've been to the Super Bowl, they've had coordinators who have been good enough to be head coaches and lead their team to the Super Bowl. So I think that's what's lacking right now from the Steelers. It's just coaching. Um, Hopefully the talent gets better. I really like Duggar from the Patriots. Seems like he makes a sure tackle, making big hits. I think he's been a really, really good pickup. Uh, Hopefully we could see Jabril Peppers in there too, after he gets off from his injuries. Some moves they made, Asante Samuel Jr. to bolster a cornerback spot. They also released Thornhill, who we've basically been throwing shade at for the last couple of weeks. Seems like he's a great guy, but he hasn't been doing too well for the Steelers secondary. And then MVS, Marquez Valdes Scantling, reunited with Aaron Rodgers here. Uh, Still on the practice squad, him and Asante Samuel, but we're hoping that we hear some news about folks being elevated and we can could see if it'll give us a spark. I think MVS is like 6'4", so well, let's get him some reps. I love Calvin Austin, um, but man, there's been two plays this season where it should be easy first down or easy touchdown, and it just like bounces off his hands and it goes somewhere else. So hopefully things change for the better there for the Steelers. Next week they play the Bengals. Uh, it could go either way. I think the Steelers are going to have to put up tons of points to win the game, but we'll see where it goes. Is this a Super Bowl bound team? I don't think anyone at the beginning of the season believed it, but they did believe that they could potentially win a playoff game. But that's also something that those Commanders fans over there in the DMV and have been thinking about during the off season, and now that is probably not going to be a reality with the current record there at 3-7. Randy, how are you feeling there about your Commanders?
Yeah, it's feeling like our season is really just starting to get out of reach at this point. With the Eagles pulling further and further ahead, and us having to play them twice. Um, we're not mathematically out of the equation, but literally one more loss, one more game bad, and you can pretty much write us off. Um, I think the only, if I were to insert my Doctor Strange time stone, look at all the millions of outcomes that I can come up with. The only way I out that I see happening is we win the next 3 games versus the Dolphins, Broncos, and Vikings. And then the last 4 games of the season are all divisional matchups. And we play the Giants, then we play the Eagles, then the Cowboys, and then we end off playing at the Eagles in Philly. Now, the scenario that I'm envisioning is a decrepit, injured Giants. Um, Cowboys, same boat as us. If they take another L in the next week or two, we're both just down in the dumps pretty much and need to win out. Um, I think that game is going to be a 50-50 no matter what. And then the Eagles will probably have safely secured a playoff spot by this point in time. And that would lead me to hope that maybe they rest the tush push and they rest Saquon. And that allows for an opportunity for us to win some garbage games that don't matter in the scheme of our division or the Eagles' playoff hopes, but give us a chance at going 500 or a game or two above and sneaking into a wild card spot. But that's my delusion. That's my hopium. That's all I got this week. I think against the Lions, just thoroughly outcoached. Team didn't have turnovers. We just looked like the lesser team, and the Lions really just um, are a great team. Rematch of divisional matchup from last year in the playoffs, and they got their lick back against us. Being without Jaden sucks. I hope that his injury, can heal. Heard that it also wasn't as bad as it looked. Thankful for that, but also at this point, with 7 games being lost, I'd rather trot Mariota out there, see if we can string some wins together before trying to rush Jaden back out to the field. And that's where I stand. Sad that our season has come to this. I'm willing to give Dan Quinn some grace because of last season and this season's injuries, but it's something's got to give, and I think our game plans need to be a little bit better because I think we're just getting outcoached and outplayed by the better teams in the league.
Yeah, I mean it's tough when you don't have your star player, and it's tough when the defense, which has kept the Commanders in a lot of games, has been getting gashed. And the Lions are no joke. I mean, the Lions have a high-powered offense, and this is who we thought the Lions would be. But they get a bounce back game this week against the Dolphins, and that game's gonna be over there in Madrid. So this the inaugural game in
Madrid.
Spain. So hopefully those
Look, I'm
Commanders
scared.
players are.
I'm scared because the Dolphins are feeling themselves. The international game. All these boys are going to be wanting to show
Uh,
out. We'll see, but
Miami's 2.5 favorite going into the game. I mean, they speak Spanish down there in Miami, though they might get distracted over there in Madrid. So maybe the Commanders could pull away there. Um, So, yep, the are going over to the Steelers this weekend. We see some NFC matchups: Packers, Giants. The Ravens are playing the Browns. So it'd be interesting to see where that heads. And then the Chiefs have a must-win game over there against the Broncos. Thursday night football tomorrow is going to be Jets at Patriots. So we'll see if the Patriots can show up in prime time. And then Monday Night Football, those struggling Dallas Cowboys are playing the struggling Raiders in the Struggle Bowl over there in Monday Night Football.
Struggle.
So that should be interesting going into week 11. So let's hop into some other sports. We're not going to go do a whole segment, but we'll do a spiel at least from each of us. Maybe we could start with Quay. Do you have anything to talk about over there in the NBA?
Oh, well, I mean, NBA, the start of the year has seen like some just kind of record breaking scores, just totals, just if you looked at collective, not necessarily just individually. We've been having some high scoring games just the other night. The Heat were able to win off of a crazy buzzer beater with zero point 0.4 seconds off of a inbound alley oop to take the overtime victory against the Cleveland Cavaliers, who, Donovan Mitchell has been playing MVP esque basketball. Not very uncommon or unfamiliar for him to start the season off hot like this. So we'll see if he can finally get over the hump and bring himself a championship. The East is pretty wide open. Um, a lot of injuries, but as the year goes on, the East is going to get tougher. The Heat are able to win games without Tyler Hero right now, so we don't know. Norman Powell has been really good with the Heat. Been a great signing to have with the team. But Wemby, being Wemby, teams maybe have started to try to figure him out a little bit, but I think it'll be something that he'll obviously figure out. Teams have been using a forward, whether it's a small forward or a power forward. Obviously, anyone is shorter than him to try and prevent him from facing up and dribbling the basketball because obviously when you're 7'5", 7'6", your dribble comes pretty high. His dribble probably comes up to your head, so it's just literally just based off of how tall he is. But he's put in a lot of work this season with all the greats, especially Hakeem Olajuwon. So I think he'll be able to neutralize that because the best way to neutralize that is posting up, and he can easily shoot over anyone. So, but the Spurs have had their best record since that golden era with Tony Parker, Ginobili, Kawhi, and Tim Duncan. So this is really good for the Spurs here. Wemby is really proven to try to be the face of the league, or at least one of the faces of the league. Jokic has been averaging a triple double hit their last games. And the last person to really do that, especially with the numbers that he's put up, it's like 30, 12, and 12. It's been Wilt Chamberlain back in the day. So it's just man has been he's been a multiple MVP for a reason. Still think he is the best player in the league right now, with Giannis being like a second. With that being said, one of the players of the league or faces of the league we have, is Luka Doncic, and Luka has put up 270 points in the first 7 games, which is the most. I believe in NBA history or Lakers history. I had to double check that full stat there. But 270 points in his first 7 games, ridiculous. The guy obviously is a bucket. And the Lakers are an interesting team too. With no LeBron, it's been him and Austin Reeves, and sometimes just Austin Reeves, taking over. The Lake Show is very interesting. It's kind of crazy to watch. Just to kind of see these 2 white guys, and especially, Austin Reeves. I had a client had his daughter literally say, if I walked past Austin Reeves, I wouldn't think this dude was a basketball player and like a really good like basketball player. And I'm like, I know he looks like he's like runs a business, or he's like some accountant, or like some tech dude. It's crazy. Like, and he's a certified bucket too. So, and just something maybe a little more negative around the league is John Morant, maybe probably going to get traded out of Memphis. Seems very disinterested. Hasn't been playing the best basketball whatsoever of his career. Um, it. I don't know what it is. I don't. It's kind of sad to see, him kind of go out this way. If it's just about not wanting to be in Memphis, I would at least still try to play my best. And maybe he's trying too hard for that reason because he wants to try to play really well so he can at least keep his stock high. But um, I do think if his time is up in Memphis, there's obviously going to be a lot of suitors for him. And
DC, please save us.
hey, you guys have some young assets that could, be traded back to, could be traded back that way. So you never know. You never know. Memphis could say, yeah, give us one of these old heads. We'll take Chris Middleton. We'll take one of your young guys, and then go from there. But man, it's been a great start to the year. I thought the penalties with the defense, the hand touching was going to be more of a thing, but actually hasn't really affected the games. It's been high scoring, and maybe for some people that's a little annoying. They want to see a little more defense, but then you hear arguments about games being boring when they're not high scoring. So I don't really know what people want, but in terms of the NBA right now, it's been high scoring. It's been really exciting. It's been kind of crazy. Um, just the other night, 2 nights ago, we had 6 crazy games. The Heat being one of those games that were in overtime, or just crazy like final seconds going on. So it's been a lot of drama, and it's still early on in the season, so I cannot wait to see how it all shapes up for the rest of the year.
Yeah, well, thank you for a recap of the NBA. We'll definitely get into more lengthy NBA discussions as the season continues. As you know, some people say that season doesn't start till after Christmas. Uh, I wanted to do my spiel on the UFC. There's a UFC pay-per-view live from Madison Square Garden, MSG in New York City. UFC 322. It's a packed card. The two main events are double champ versus champ. You got Jack Della Maddalena with the welterweight belt, who beat Bilal Muhammad for it, and you have Islam Makhachev, who has had the lightweight belt. It seems like for a long time now. He defended it against Volk, and uh, fought him twice, and prevented Volk from being that double champ. On the other hand, you have Zhang Wei Li, who is moving up to challenge Valentina Shevchenko. That should be a crazy fight. This uh, shorter, faster fighter going up against someone who's bigger, taller, in Valentina. Really excited to see that matchup as well. So that is this weekend over there in NYC. A couple other, I guess, matchups to look out for. You got Leon Edwards, who was the former champion, the one who actually lost and gave the belt to Bilal, who gave it to Jack, who has it now. He is also on this card. It's funny. I was reading the story about how when Islam came to first train at, I think it was at AKA, I believe Leon Edwards was one of his like first sparring partners, and Javier, who was also a trainer for Khabib, basically I think told him like, oh, be careful, he has a really good left kick there, and I think it's that same kick that knocked out Kamaru Usman. And the rest was history, and that's how he got his belt. So he's looking to kind of get back there and get a bounce back win, and get back up there in the rankings, fighting Carlos Pratas, who uh, is super dangerous. He's already talking all this shit about how Leon's a quitter and how he won't be able to last. So that'll be interesting to see. We have Sean Brady and Michael Morales. Another welterweight matchup. Sean Brady, 18-1. His only loss was to Bilal Muhammad, and Morales, 18-0, undefeated. So basically have two almost undefeated fighters there. That should be exciting. And then you also have Darush and Saint Denis fighting that lightweight to kind of top it off there. So should be a lot of fun on Saturday night. Always love a good fight card. Hope you get to enjoy that UFC pay per view there this weekend. So we will bring it over to Randy to close us off with some international soccer.
Yes,
Nice. Go
most
ahead.
definitely. We've got another international break across the European League. So, just for those who aren't familiar, the international break is when a lot of the major leagues pause their games for usually 1 week to 2 week period. And during that time, international teams gather and they have matches that are either international friendlies or qualification matches for upcoming tournaments. This year happens to be a World Cup year. So we'll have a few teams who are going to be playing for their qualification hopes and booking their spots. Too many games to name, but just keep an eye out for any um, any of those national team games. Support your country, pick a country somewhere else to follow. There's going to be some really interesting storylines. This year's or 2026 World Cup is going to be the largest ever in terms of they're expanding the amount of teams for the first time that can enter the World Cup. So that means that more opportunities for some Cinderella stories, similar to like an NCAA tournament, on the world's biggest stage and the world's biggest global sporting spectacle. So, really excited about that. European League season is in full swing as well. Plenty of exciting storylines there. Arsenal looks like they have a stranglehold on the Premier League, but it's still early in the year. Liverpool is faltering, and Manchester City is making a big push. Over in Spain, Real Madrid and Barcelona are trading spots at the top, but Real Madrid has found some consistency, whereas Barcelona has dropped a couple points with draws recently, and they did lose El Clasico, so that sets them back just a little bit. And the Champions League is in the early stages, but all of the big dogs are still in it, and we'll look forward to seeing the rest of that later on in the season. And one other part that I wanted to add to my spiel was actually just highlighting some esports as well. I know here we talk about a lot of our favorite sports and sports leagues. Um, I more recently became a huge fan of fighting game tournaments and something that I always paid attention to casually from my upbringing. But recently got the chance to attend DreamHack in Atlanta and witness the SWC World Championships, where there was over $4 million in prize money on the line between four games produced by the company SNK. Who's familiar? If you're not familiar, they created the famous character Terry Bogard for Fatal Fury,
Fatal
um, and
Fury.
and the famous game King of Fighters as well, um, are both some of the mainstay franchises of this corporation SNK. And it was amazing to see some of the best players in the world really put their talents on display there. They're also at the same convention. There was the Marvel Rivals World Championship. Got to see Guang Guang in person, my boy, and really seeing some of those best players in the world take off there. It's insane to see some of the reactions that some of these folks have. And I think it's something that as we grow into the future is only going to get bigger and bigger.
Hmm.
Things to look forward to as well. Street Fighter League is actually starting tomorrow. You can catch that on Twitch or YouTube on the Capcom Fighters Twitch channel. I definitely recommend tuning in. Usually it's really fun to watch the matches with commentary. And the cool thing about the Street Fighter League format is that it's a team format. So there's teams of four where players are sponsored, and it's some of the best players in the world getting to compete against one another um, live on stage. So it should be a good time.
Yeah, well, thanks so much for the update on those international sports, soccer and esports. Esports definitely growing over here in America. So is soccer, in terms of a sport that people watch. So it's really interesting uh, to hear, and I think that might be a first on the Spiel. So, breaking new ground here tonight on season 6, episode 10 of the Spiel Sports Talk Show. I've had a great time with my guests. Thanks a lot to Quay. Thanks a lot to Randy for being with us tonight. And I hope everyone has a good rest of their week and has a good weekend. And I hope to see everyone next episode here. So until next time on the Spiel Sports Talk Show, we'll catch you later.
Next time, guys.
Peace.
Nice. Good show.
They can't bear shit.